I stand before you today, the representative of a family in grief, in a country in mourning, before a world.
The ballroom erupting sounds like a gunshot. Hundreds of wooden chairs scrape violently against the polished marble floor as the audience surges to its feet. The noise crashes through the cavernous space, shaking the crystal drops on the golden chandeliers overhead. Applause thunders from every corner, echoing off the high walls and bouncing back into the center of the room. This deafening roar is not on the official event schedule. The timeline has completely shattered. At the massive mahogany lectern, Charles Spencer stands entirely motionless. The sharp lines of his tailored black tuxedo and crisp black bow tie clash with the pale, rigid set of his jaw. His eyes remain locked on the center table. He does not smile. He does not nod. He grips the hard edges of the wooden podium so tightly his knuckles turn completely white. He has just spoken one sentence into the microphone, a sentence that fractures decades of strict royal protocol. A family can survive grief. What it cannot survive forever is the profitable manipulation of grief. Down at the principal table, Queen Camilla sits completely frozen. Her wide, unblinking eyes stare directly up at the stage. A heavy string of pearls rests against her collarbone, perfectly positioned above the silver diamond brooch pinned to her immaculate white dress. Her hand flies upward, shaking, her fingers pressing hard against her open mouth. She stops breathing. She does not look away from the man at the podium. The cameras flash around her in a blinding, rapid-fire storm of white light, capturing her shock in real time. Near the heavy brass service doors, DeAndre presses 2 fingers against his hidden earpiece. The event director's carefully polished composure cracks open. His jaw muscles jump under his skin. "Remove the chair," DeAndre whispers fiercely into the tiny microphone clipped beneath his lapel. "Do it right now, before the press gets the angle." At the far edge of the room stands the target of his panic. It is an empty, velvet-cushioned seat placed at the very end of a table reserved for humanitarian workers. The place setting in front of it is flawless. A polished silver fork, a crystal water glass, and a folded white linen napkin sit perfectly aligned. Hi viewers, have you ever risked everything to stand up for something you believe in? Let me know your story in the comments. There is no name card on this table. 4 security personnel in dark suits detach themselves from the perimeter wall. They move fast, their thick rubber soles silent against the carpet, cutting directly through the standing ovation. They close in on the empty seat. A young woman steps directly into their path. Zuri plants her black slip-resistant shoes firmly into the plush carpet. She wears the crisp black and white uniform of a banquet server. Her chest rises and falls in rapid, shallow breaths. Her hands shake violently, rattling the heavy silver serving tray she presses against her hip. She tilts her chin up, staring right into the chest of the lead security officer. She refuses to step aside. Directly behind her, resting perfectly on the center of the empty porcelain dinner plate, lies a single white rose. The security guard reaches out, his hand wrapping around Zuri's upper arm. She jerks her shoulder back, breaking his grip. The crowd nearest the table stops clapping. People turn their heads. The cameras pivot away from the stage and point straight at the young server, defending an empty chair. DeAndre watches the scene unfold on the video monitors in the back. A cold sweat breaks out across the back of his neck. The situation is spiraling completely out of his control. Up on the stage, Spencer watches the standoff. The tight tension in his broad shoulders shifts. He leans closer to the microphone. The audience assumes the climax of his unapproved speech has passed, but they are entirely wrong. The deepest family wounds are often not caused by what people say, but by the wild stories other people construct around their silence. Spencer releases his right hand from the wooden lectern. He reaches slowly inside the breast pocket of his tailored jacket. The movement is incredibly deliberate. DeAndre freezes by the service doors. His stomach drops. Spencer is about to produce documentary evidence right in front of the world. Instead of pulling out a folded letter or a printed email, Spencer's fingers pinch the edges of a small, faded piece of cardstock. The corners are slightly bent. The black ink is old. It is the original name card, the exact piece of history DeAndre had ordered his entire staff to erase and destroy. Spencer holds it up under the stage lights for every single camera to capture. DeAndre strikes a thick black marker through the printed seating chart. The ink bleeds immediately into the heavy cream paper. He presses so hard the tip of the marker tears the sheet. "Erase it," he says, not looking up from the desk. "Scrub the name from the digital logs, the printed programs, and the final press release. This seat does not exist." 36 hours before the gala erupts, the production office smells like stale coffee and ozone. Rain lashes violently against the tall glass windows of the St. Celandine headquarters. Nia stands on the opposite side of the desk, clutching a stack of laminated schedule cards. Her fingers trace the edges of the plastic. "Dr. Imani requested that specific chair remain empty," Nia says, keeping her voice low and even. She explicitly told Charles Spencer it was a tribute. Spencer agreed. DeAndre drops the marker onto the glass desk. The loud clatter cuts through the room. "I do not care what Dr. Imani requested." He leans forward, placing both hands flat on the table. Spencer agreed because it gives him emotional leverage. "I approved it initially because I thought it would generate good press. Things have changed. Queen Camilla confirmed her attendance 20 minutes ago." Malik steps out from the shadows near the filing cabinets. The senior protocol liaison buttons his suit jacket with quick, sharp movements. Putting a memorial chair right next to the principal royal guest is a massive liability, Malik says, his tone completely flat. "The media will photograph them in the same frame. They will create a comparison. If the Queen looks uncomfortable, the palace will hold this charity responsible. You remove the chair, or the royal protection team shuts down the entire floor." DeAndre points a finger at Naya. "You heard him. Get it off the map." Naya turns around and walks quickly back to her workstation. The harsh fluorescent lights buzz above her head. She drops into her rolling chair and wakes up her computer monitor. She pulls up the master seating grid. The empty chair at table 14 blinks back at her. The late Princess of Wales had promised to attend an early version of this exact charity dinner decades ago. She died before she could fulfill that promise. Dr. Imani wanted one chair left empty to honor the work left unfinished. Nia highlights the specific row of code attached to the seat. She hits the delete key. The system prompts her for an authorization override. DeAndre wants avoiding controversy to matter more than honoring the actual history of the charity. He views human grief strictly as a public relations commodity. Nia types in DeAndre's director passcode to finalize the deletion. An error message flashes across her screen in bright red text. "Override rejected. Modification locked by external protocol." Nia frowns. She leans closer to the glowing screen, the blue light reflecting in her dark eyes. She opens the revision history log. The system shows that the chair has already been flagged for removal, but not by DeAndre's office. Someone else has locked the grid. "DeAndre," Nia calls out, her voice tight. "Did you already authorize the removal through a different department?" "No," DeAndre snaps, staring at his phone. "Just delete it." "I can't." Nia's hands hover over the keyboard. "The deletion order is already in the system. It carries an external protocol code." She clicks the security tab to reveal the origin of the command. A string of numbers appears on the screen. She references the physical master list taped to her desk. Her breath catches in her throat. The numbers match the private office code for Queen Camilla. Nia quickly pulls up the incoming communications log. Her eyes scan the data rapid fire. She checks the timestamps. She checks the server pathways. A cold chill runs rapidly down her spine. The authorization code sitting on her screen looks absolutely genuine. It carries the right encryption sequence. It has the correct digital signature. But Queen Camilla's office server shows absolutely zero record of ever sending it. Charles Spencer slams the heavy leather folder onto the surface of his polished oak desk. The loud crack echoes violently through the quiet study, disturbing the thick dust motes floating in the golden light of the brass desk lamp. He grips the hard edges of the folder, his knuckles turning completely white, and rips the thick parchment paper directly from the tight metal binding. He throws the loose pages aggressively across the dark wood. The printed text of his approved gala address stares back at him, mocking him in bold black ink. He drags his index finger down the page, his jaw locked so tight his teeth grind together. His chest physically tightens, making each breath feel like pulling thick air through a narrow straw. He stops reading and shifts his sharp gaze to the far corner of the desk. A heavy silver-framed photograph catches the harsh light. The image shows his sister smiling, but her eyes look incredibly tired. The silver frame feels freezing cold against his bare skin as he picks it up. A sharp, burning ache hits the back of his throat. His mind forces him backward in time, dragging him away from the present. The memory hits him like a physical blow. He feels the cold plastic of the telephone receiver pressed hard against his ear in the dead middle of the night. He hears her voice on the other end of the line. It sounded thin, shaky, and incredibly small. She was crying softly. She asked if she could drive over, just to sit at his kitchen table and talk. He remembers looking down at his expensive watch, watching the second hand tick past 3 in the morning. He remembers rubbing his exhausted eyes, calculating the hours of sleep he would lose before an early morning meeting. He told her they would talk tomorrow. He promised her he would drive down the very next morning and they would have coffee. Tomorrow never came. The heavy weight of that unanswered conversation sits in the center of his chest permanently. It feels like a block of solid lead resting on his lungs. He carries this suffocating guilt every single day of his life. He absolutely despises the way the public treats her memory now. They reduce her to a flawless, untouchable saint or a tragic, dramatic scandal. They never talk about the lonely woman sitting alone by a telephone in the dark, asking her brother for a few minutes of his time. The sharp, high-pitched ring of his cell phone completely shatters the quiet room. Spencer flinches hard, nearly dropping the heavy silver frame onto the hardwood floor. He grabs the phone off the desk and hits the green accept button without checking the caller ID. "Charles," Dr. Imani says immediately. Her voice is entirely flat and stripped of any polite, professional greeting. DeAndre is going to pull the chair. Spencer grips the phone so hard the plastic casing creaks loudly. "What are you talking about? We agreed on the tribute. It is already in the master program." Hi viewers, have you ever felt the heavy burden of a promise you failed to keep to someone you loved? Tell me how you handled it in the comments below. "DeAndre does not care about our agreement," Dr. Imani replies. The heavy sound of rain hitting a glass window plays loudly in the background of her call. Queen Camilla confirmed her attendance 20 minutes ago. DeAndre thinks a memorial chair will ruin the aesthetic of his royal broadcast. He views it as a visual liability. He is shutting the whole tribute down. "I am calling to tell you to keep your temper in check tonight. Do not turn this charity dinner into a massive public fight, Charles. Honoring her memory does not mean you have to burn the entire room down to prove a point." Spencer ends the call without saying a single word in return. He drops the phone onto the desk. A hot wave of pure anger burns rapidly up the back of his neck. He must decide right now if fighting DeAndre publicly will genuinely honor his sister, or if it will simply rip open old family wounds for the world to watch and eagerly consume. He reaches for his computer mouse and clicks open his private email inbox. He needs to check the final event schedule they sent over this morning. He downloads the new digital file sent by the St. Celandine production office. The document pops up on his large computer monitor. He scrolls down quickly to page 4. He stops dead. He leans closer to the glowing screen, his eyes narrowing into tight slits. The speech document looks entirely different. The margins are changed. The paragraphs are short and choppy. The words he spent weeks writing are completely gone. He clicks the search bar at the top of the screen. He types in the word chair. The system flashes 0 results. He types in the word sister. 0 results. He types in the word memory. 0 results. His heart hammers fiercely against his ribs. DeAndre edited the approved speech without asking for his consent. They erased every single reference to the memorial. Spencer scrolls rapidly down to the very last page of the document, his blood boiling. He scans the final paragraph. His breath catches in his throat. They deleted the entire tribute, but the person who scrubbed the document made a massive mistake. They completely overlooked one single sentence buried at the very end of the page. Queen Camilla drops a thick, heavy stack of glossy briefing papers flat onto the glass coffee table. The loud smack echoes sharply through the private waiting lounge, making Tariq, her tall private secretary, flinch and take a quick half-step backward. Camilla does not apologize for the sudden noise. She taps her perfectly manicured index fingernail sharply against the top page of the dossier. Her eyes lock aggressively onto a bright red sticky flag attached to the final page of the evening schedule. "Explain this to me right now," Camilla demands. Her voice remains perfectly calm, but the tone leaves absolutely 0 room for hesitation or excuses. Why is there a blank space designated on the official seating chart right next to the humanitarian award winners? What does this mean? Tariq clears his throat loudly, tugging nervously at the stiff white cuffs of his dark gray suit. He looks down at his own clipboard. "It is a memorial gesture, Your Majesty. A symbolic empty chair placed at table 14. It was requested weeks ago by Dr. Imani to honor a past promise." Camilla straightens her back, pressing her shoulders hard against the dark velvet cushions of the sofa. She crosses her arms over her chest. "And why was I not informed of this highly specific detail before I officially confirmed my attendance tonight? Who authorized this exact placement so close to my designated seating area?" Before Tariq can formulate a proper answer, the heavy wooden doors to the private lounge swing open. DeAndre walks into the room. He moves with extreme confidence, his expensive leather shoes completely silent on the thick, plush carpet. He stops exactly 3 feet from the edge of the glass table and bows his head slightly. He adjusts the perfect knot of his blue silk tie, his face a flawless mask of total professionalism. "I can answer that question for you," DeAndre says smoothly, stepping in front of Tariq. The request was slipped into the master program at the very last minute by Charles Spencer. Camilla folds her hands tightly in her lap. She studies DeAndre's face, searching his eyes for any crack in his polished expression. Why would he do that without going through the proper protocol channels? DeAndre does not blink. He lies directly to her face without a single shift in his resting heart rate. Spencer is angry. He is highly unpredictable. He wants the press cameras to capture you sitting next to an empty chair dedicated to his sister. He wants to force a harsh visual comparison on live television. He requested this empty seat purely to provoke the media and embarrass the royal family in front of a global audience. Camilla closes her eyes tightly. She presses 2 fingers hard against her temples, fighting the sudden, sharp headache building right behind her eyes. The room goes totally silent. The large antique clock on the wall ticks loudly, counting down the seconds. DeAndre waits patiently, watching her like a hawk watching a field mouse. He needs her to say the right words. He needs her to give him the exact weapon he needs to control the narrative. "I do not want a massive spectacle tonight," Camilla finally says, dropping her hand heavily back into her lap. She looks directly at DeAndre. "Do not do anything cruel to him, DeAndre. Just handle the situation with respect. Keep the peace." DeAndre nods slowly, a tiny smirk threatening to break his professional mask. Understood completely. He turns around and walks quickly out of the private lounge. The heavy wooden doors click shut firmly behind him. He immediately pulls his sleek cell phone from his pocket. His thumbs fly rapidly across the glass screen. He opens a secure text message thread with Nia down in the production office. He types rapidly. "The Queen gave me direct permission. She thinks it is a massive stunt. Remove the chair completely. Do it discreetly and deny everything." He successfully weaponizes her cautious words, twisting a simple request for respect into a direct command for absolute destruction. Back inside the quiet lounge, Camilla stands up slowly. She smooths the front of her tailored white dress. She looks over at Tariq. She feels a sudden wave of deep discomfort settling heavily in her stomach. "Tariq," she says softly, her voice losing its commanding edge, "send a message to the event staff immediately. I want a single white rose placed somewhere near the humanitarian section, just a quiet sign of respect. Make sure there are no cameras around when they do it." Tariq nods sharply and rushes out the door to catch DeAndre in the busy hallway. He relays the specific instruction word for word. DeAndre takes the small, pristine white rose from Tariq's hand. He smiles widely and promises to take care of the arrangement immediately. As soon as Tariq turns the corner and disappears, DeAndre stops smiling. He walks quickly down the long, empty service corridor until he reaches a dark, unmarked utility closet. He twists the cold brass handle and pulls the heavy door open. The closet smells intensely like harsh chemical bleach and wet mops. DeAndre drops the beautiful white rose onto the dirty, stained tile floor. He violently kicks it into the dark corner with the toe of his expensive shoe and slams the heavy door shut. Nia aggressively hammers the enter key on her mechanical keyboard. The loud clacking noise fills the empty production office. She stares intently at the glowing computer monitors, dragging the original seating chart onto her left screen and the amended version onto her right. Her dark eyes dart rapidly back and forth between the two grids. A cold sweat breaks out on her forehead. The digital revision history log flashes bright yellow, indicating a severe security override. She highlights the timeline. Someone modified the master grid 4 distinct times within 90 flat minutes. The digital cursor blinks steadily next to table 14. The specific code for the late Princess of Wales's memorial name card was completely deleted, then manually restored, and finally deleted again in rapid succession. Nia clicks on the final authorization signature. A long string of numbers drops down into a separate window. She pulls a thick, dusty employee directory binder from the bottom drawer of her desk. She flips rapidly through the heavy paper pages, tracing her index finger down the columns of protocol access codes. She stops abruptly. Her fingernail presses hard into the paper. The authorization code attached to the final deletion command belongs to an executive protocol officer who officially retired from royal service over 8 months ago. Out in the busy main service corridor, Zuri presses her back flat against the cold metal door of the walk-in refrigerator. She holds a stack of folded white linen napkins tightly against her chest. Just around the corner, DeAndre stands in the shadows, talking in a low, rapid voice to the head of event security. Zuri holds her breath, straining to hear the conversation over the loud clattering of plates from the nearby kitchen. "If any reporter asks about a missing chair, you deny it completely," DeAndre orders, adjusting his expensive silk tie. "You tell them absolutely no memorial was ever planned. Erase the narrative before they can print it." The security chief shifts his weight. "What about the official photographs?" The press pool is already setting up their equipment near table 14. DeAndre smiles, showing perfectly white, straight teeth. "Let them set up. I arranged for selected journalists to capture Queen Camilla standing directly beside the empty space before my staff completely removes it. We get the emotional, high-value photograph to boost the charity's profile, and then we completely eliminate the chair before Spencer even walks into the room. He cannot mention a memorial that does not physically exist. Zuri's heart slams against her ribs. She steps away from the cold metal door and walks quickly back toward the production office. She pushes the door open and drops the heavy stack of napkins onto Nia's glass desk. Nia jumps, startled by the sudden noise. She looks up, her face pale. "Zuri, you cannot be in here. DeAndre is looking for anyone stepping out of line. He is using a ghost code to change the seating chart," Zuri says quickly, leaning over the desk. "I just heard him. He is setting up a photo trap for the Queen and Spencer. He wants the charity to benefit from the image, but he is going to steal the chair away to gag Spencer during his speech." Nia reaches across the desk and grabs Zuri's wrist tightly. Her grip is incredibly strong. "Do not interfere with this," Nia warns, her voice shaking slightly. "We are completely expendable to them. You need this paycheck. Do your job, serve the tables, and look the other way. If you cross DeAndre tonight, he will ruin your career." Zuri pulls her wrist free. She does not say a single word. She turns around and walks straight back out into the long, dark hallway. She heads strictly for the restricted utility closet near the rear loading dock. She twists the cold brass handle and pulls the heavy wooden door open. The harsh smell of bleach hits her nose immediately. She reaches for the pull-string light switch, bathing the small room in a weak, yellow glow. She looks down at the stained tile floor. Shoved carelessly into the dark corner is the pristine white rose. The delicate petals are slightly bruised from DeAndre's heavy shoe. Zuri kneels down slowly, the rough fabric of her uniform trousers pulling tight against her knees. She picks up the flower very carefully. As she lifts it toward the weak light, she notices a small, thick piece of stationery taped firmly beneath its green plastic water container. Zuri peels the tape back. Her eyes widen rapidly as she reads the quick, handwritten note scrawled in black ink. "Please place this on her chair. C." Heavy rain aggressively batters the black umbrellas of the security team. Bright white camera flashes explode rapidly through the dark, wet evening. High-profile guests rush urgently up the red carpet, their expensive evening gowns and tailored tuxedos shielded from the harsh weather by dozens of frantic event staff. Charles Spencer steps out of a massive black town car. The cold wind immediately hits his face, pushing his blonde hair back. He does not stop for the screaming photographers gathered behind the metal barricades. He walks purposefully up the wide concrete steps and straight through the heavy glass doors of the St. Celandine venue. He hands his wet coat to a waiting attendant without making eye contact. He walks directly into the main ballroom. The huge room smells strongly of expensive perfume, roasted meats, and fresh lilies. Golden light spills from massive crystal chandeliers above. Spencer walks straight toward table 14. His polished leather shoes sink deeply into the thick carpet. He reaches the edge of the humanitarian section and stops dead. The muscles in his jaw clench so tightly they tremble under his skin. The chair is completely gone. The table setup is perfectly symmetrical, leaving absolutely no gap where the memorial should sit. He stares at the tight arrangement. He does not yell. He does not alert security. He stands completely frozen in absolute silence. Queen Camilla enters the ballroom through the private royal entrance on the opposite side of the room. She walks slowly, surrounded by a tight ring of security personnel. Her eyes scan the crowded room and land immediately on Spencer. She watches him staring blankly at the edge of table 14. Their eyes meet across the vast room. The physical distance between them feels immense. Spencer walks slowly toward the center of the ballroom to meet her. They stop exactly 2 feet apart. The greeting is entirely rigid. Spencer offers a short, stiff bow. Camilla extends a brief, cold hand. Neither of them smiles. Neither of them speaks a single word about the missing tribute. Their faces remain completely unreadable masks of strict public courtesy. From the elevated balcony above the main floor, DeAndre watches the silent exchange. He stands with both hands resting flat on the polished brass railing. He watches them like a theater director positioning actors on a grand stage. He smiles sharply, deeply satisfied by the icy tension radiating from the floor below. Down near the front of the room, Dr. Imani searches for her assigned seat. She clutches her evening bag tightly, adjusting her dark glasses. She walks toward table 14, expecting to sit near Spencer. Instead, a young usher in a dark vest steps into her path and redirects her entirely. He escorts her to the absolute farthest corner of the enormous ballroom. They seat her at a small, cramped table wedged right next to the loud swinging doors of the main kitchen. She is completely isolated, physically blocked from reaching Spencer or the Queen by hundreds of standing guests. Malik pushes forcefully through the crowded lobby. The senior palace liaison holds a freshly printed copy of the running order tightly in his fist. He spots DeAndre descending the main staircase. Malik intercepts him immediately, blocking his path entirely. The approved schedule was altered completely, Malik says, shoving the thick paper toward DeAndre's chest. The timing for the speeches is entirely different, and the security checkpoints around the royal table are entirely missing. Administrative updates. DeAndre answers smoothly, brushing Malik's hand away. We streamlined the floor plan for better camera angles. While DeAndre distracts Malik on the staircase, Zuri moves quickly through the loud, chaotic dining room. She grips the heavy wooden back of a velvet-cushioned chair. She uses the noisy arrival of the main orchestra to mask her movements. She drags the chair swiftly from a backup storage area and slides it perfectly into the empty space at the end of table 14. She reaches into her dark apron, pulls out a folded linen napkin, a silver fork, and a crystal water glass, and rapidly builds the place setting. She finishes the exact setup just as the bright house lights flash twice, signaling the start of the dinner service. Zuri turns sharply and disappears into the fast-moving stream of waitstaff carrying heavy silver trays. DeAndre walks down the final step of the staircase. He turns toward the center of the room to conduct his final visual sweep. His confident smile drops instantly. His eyes lock onto table 14. The empty chair sits perfectly in place, fully restored. His chest heaves with sudden anger. He reaches immediately for his hidden earpiece, fully prepared to order his security team to rip the seat away. He stops abruptly. His hand drops slowly back to his side. He stares at the empty chair. Removing it now would cause a massive, loud disruption right in front of the royal press pool. Instead of pulling it away, he decides to watch it closely. He wants to discover exactly which employee dared to disobey his direct command, so he can destroy their career entirely. The loud clinking of expensive silver forks against fine china fills the enormous dining hall. The noise acts as a heavy cover for the intense, suffocating tension rolling off the principal table. Hundreds of wealthy guests eat their roasted lamb and drink expensive red wine, completely unaware of the silent war happening exactly in the center of the room. Queen Camilla sets her crystal water glass down onto the crisp white tablecloth. She turns her head slightly toward DeAndre, who stands hovering just 2 steps behind her right shoulder. She keeps her voice extremely low, perfectly modulated to carry only a few inches. Why does that empty chair at the end of the table have absolutely no name card attached to it? Camilla asks. She keeps her eyes locked on the blank space. Before anyone else at the table can open their mouth to speak, DeAndre leans down immediately. He answers with rapid, practiced precision. It was an administrative oversight by the charity staff, Your Majesty. We are correcting it shortly. Charles Spencer sits exactly 3 seats away. The loud orchestra music masking their voices causes him to hear only fragments of the quiet exchange. He hears the Queen question the chair. He sees her strict, unsmiling expression. He watches DeAndre lean in and whisper an apology. Spencer grips his heavy linen napkin tightly in his lap. His knuckles turn completely white. He completely misreads the interaction. He assumes instantly that she wants the entire tribute removed from her sight immediately. DeAndre straightens his posture and walks slowly around the massive round table. He stops directly behind Spencer. He leans down, placing one hand flat on the back of Spencer's heavy chair. The Queen finds the memorial highly inappropriate for tonight's celebration. DeAndre whispers directly into Spencer's ear. She finds the blank setting disrespectful. Spencer's jaw locks tight. He glares directly across the table at Camilla, who is currently looking away, entirely unaware of DeAndre's lie. DeAndre then steps smoothly back across the thick carpet. He catches Camilla's attention again. Mr. Spencer is intentionally using the blank setting to draw negative press attention directly toward you, DeAndre says softly, his face a perfect mask of total concern. He is trying to force an embarrassing moment on live television. From her isolated table near the loud kitchen doors, Dr. Imani watches the scene unfold. She pushes her untouched dinner plate away. She observes DeAndre pacing back and forth behind the principal table. She sees the rigid anger suddenly take over Spencer's posture. She sees the defensive, closed-off way Camilla suddenly crosses her arms. Imani recognizes the manipulation instantly. DeAndre is aggressively manufacturing a massive conflict in real time, playing two deeply grieving people against each other, strictly for the benefit of the television cameras. Imani stands up quickly. She grabs her dark evening bag and tries to push past the thick crowd of standing waiters. A large security guard immediately steps right in front of her, blocking her path entirely. He holds up a large hand, forcing her to step backward into her cramped seating area. She cannot reach the center of the room. She cannot warn Spencer. Zuri walks quickly past the kitchen doors, carrying a heavy silver tray loaded with empty soup bowls. Imani reaches out rapidly and grabs the fabric of Zuri's dark apron. Zuri stops abruptly, the heavy bowls rattling loudly on the metal tray. She looks down at the older woman. Imani reaches quickly into her black evening bag. Her hands shake as she pulls out a thick, sealed white envelope. She presses it hard into Zuri's free hand. "You have to take this directly to Charles Spencer right now," Imani says, her voice low and completely frantic. "He is sitting at the center table. Hand it strictly to him. Do not let the event director see you holding it." Zuri stares at the white envelope. The thick paper feels heavy against her damp palm. She looks across the massive, crowded ballroom. She sees DeAndre standing like a dark shadow behind the royal guests. She nods once strictly to Imani. Zuri shoves the thick envelope deep into the front pocket of her apron. She tightens her grip on the heavy silver tray and steps directly into the fast-moving flow of the event staff. She weaves quickly through the narrow gaps between the large round tables. She keeps her head down, avoiding eye contact with the wealthy guests. She closes the distance rapidly. 20 feet. 10 feet. She can clearly see the back of Spencer's head. She drops her hand slowly into her apron pocket, her fingers wrapping tightly around the paper envelope. A heavy hand clamps down violently hard onto Zuri's right shoulder. The sudden, brutal force stops her dead in her tracks. If you want to see what happens next in this explosive showdown, make sure you subscribe right now and turn on your notification bell. Do not miss a support story that inspires and gives you an opportunity to share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others. Malik yanks Zuri backward with terrifying force. The heavy silver tray slips directly from her fingers. The metal crashes violently against the thick carpet, the empty soup bowls shattering into sharp white pieces. Zuri stumbles back, her rubber-soled shoes sliding on the floor. Malik does not let go of her uniform. He drags her quickly out of the crowded dining room and shoves her forcefully through the swinging doors into the harsh fluorescent light of a narrow service corridor. The heavy doors slam shut, instantly cutting off the loud orchestra music. Malik pins Zuri against the cold cinder block wall. His dark eyes burn with intense fury. He holds his hand out completely flat. He does not yell. He keeps his voice extremely low and dangerously cold. "Give me the envelope," Malik orders. "Hand it over right now, or I will have the police escort you out of this building in handcuffs." Zuri breathes rapidly, her chest heaving against her black apron. She reaches into her pocket slowly. Her fingers shake as she pulls out the thick white paper. She hands it to the senior palace liaison. Malik rips the envelope open. He pulls out a heavy piece of cream-colored stationery. His eyes scan the beautifully typed words. It is the original charity invitation, printed decades ago. It clearly promises the late Princess of Wales a permanent, honorary seat at this exact gala. Malik's jaw tightens. If Spencer holds this document up in front of the royal press pool, it will trigger a massive public confrontation. The media will absolutely crucify the Queen for taking a seat officially designated for the late princess. "You cannot hide that," Zuri says quickly, pushing herself off the cold wall. "Dr. Imani told me what it is. If you destroy that paper, you are repeating the exact injustice this entire charity claims to oppose." Malik stares hard at the young server. He looks down at the historical document. His strict priority is preventing total public disorder, but he is not a corrupt man. He folds the thick paper very carefully. He slides it inside the inner pocket of his suit jacket. Without saying a word to Zuri, he walks quickly over to a small copy machine sitting on a cluttered utility desk. He places the document on the glass, hits the green button, and slides the fresh copy into his pants pocket. The service doors swing open violently. DeAndre marches into the hallway. His expensive shoes click sharply against the hard tile. He looks down at the broken porcelain bowls scattered on the floor, then glares directly at Zuri. "Get her off my floor immediately," DeAndre snaps, pointing a sharp finger at Zuri. "Strip her credentials. Throw her completely out of the building. She is entirely done working here." Nia steps out from the shadows near the kitchen entrance. She clutches a stack of laminated schedule cards tightly to her chest. She steps directly between DeAndre and Zuri. "We cannot lose another server right now," Nia says rapidly, lying straight to her boss. 2 waitstaff just walked out. The main lectern requires dedicated water service for the speakers. If she leaves, there is nobody to service the stage during the live broadcast. DeAndre checks his expensive gold watch. He grinds his teeth together. "Fine. Put her on the stage. Keep her completely away from the royal table." He turns sharply and marches back into the main dining room. Nia grabs Zuri's arm and pulls her quickly toward the side entrance of the main stage. "Do exactly what I tell you," Nia whispers. "Stand behind the heavy velvet curtain. When the speaker walks up, you place the water glass on the lectern. You do absolutely nothing else." Zuri nods quickly. She walks up the dark wooden back stairs of the stage. She stands completely still behind the heavy red curtain. She looks out through a small gap in the fabric. The massive wooden lectern sits empty. A black leather folder rests flat on the podium. A tall man in a dark suit, completely unknown to Zuri, walks quickly across the stage. He looks nervously over his shoulder. He reaches out, grabs the black folder, and replaces it rapidly with an identical one. He quickly disappears down the opposite stairs. Zuri steps out from behind the curtain. She walks up to the lectern to place her tray down. She opens the new leather folder. She quickly reads the final paragraph printed on the thick paper. Her heart completely stops. The final lines completely endorse DeAndre's new personal foundation and completely commit Charles Spencer to fund it. Nia violently yanks the bottom drawer of her metal filing cabinet open. The heavy steel groans loudly in the empty production office. She drops to her knees on the hard floor. She tears through thick manila folders, throwing loose papers entirely over her shoulder. She finally grabs a thick black binder hidden in the very back. She throws it onto the glass desk and flips it open. Thick stacks of financial documents fill the heavy plastic sleeves. Nia runs her finger down the bright red columns of numbers. She pulls a specific sponsorship contract out of the binder and lays it flat under the harsh desk lamp. The entire gala is a financial trap. DeAndre did not just want good press, he wanted cold, hard cash. The documents outline the immediate launch of DeAndre's brand new private foundation. The financial projections show massive expected donations. Nia connects the dark dots rapidly in her head. The entire evening is perfectly engineered to create an explosive, highly emotional controversy. DeAndre knows that public outrage generates incredible amounts of online traffic. Traffic brings immense global attention. When the press writes thousands of articles about the Queen and the empty chair, millions of people will look up the St. Celandine charity. DeAndre absolutely needs Charles Spencer to read that fake speech. The substituted pages contain a direct, legally binding public endorsement of DeAndre's new foundation. If Spencer reads those words out loud on live television, it completely legitimizes the corrupt project. Furthermore, having Queen Camilla sitting directly in the front row provides the ultimate royal prestige. DeAndre is aggressively treating human pain and family grief as a massive marketing asset to launch his own career. Nia stares in horror at the documents. DeAndre needs this emotional conflict to happen, but he cannot allow Spencer to actually control the narrative. That is entirely why DeAndre stole the empty chair. He wants the cameras to capture the shock, but he wants Spencer silenced and fully manipulated. Nia grabs a thick black marker. She rips a blank piece of paper from the printer. She writes a rapid, aggressive warning across the white page. Her hand shakes badly, the black ink smearing slightly against her palm. She folds the paper into a tiny, tight square. She runs quickly out of the office and down the long hallway toward the main ballroom. Inside the massive room, the dinner plates are completely cleared. The bright house lights dim suddenly. The large stage illuminates in bright, harsh white light. The low hum of 1,000 wealthy guests talking drops into total silence. Nia pushes hard through the heavy brass doors. She spots Spencer sitting at table 14. He checks his gold watch, preparing to stand up. Nia cannot walk onto the floor. Security stands firmly at every single aisle. She spots Zuri walking quickly along the side wall, holding a fresh crystal pitcher of ice water. Nia reaches out and grabs Zuri's apron as she walks past. She shoves the tiny folded square of paper forcefully into Zuri's hand. "Put this directly on his folder," Nia whispers fiercely. "Right now." Zuri takes the paper. She walks smoothly up the side steps of the stage, just as the master of ceremonies steps up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC says loudly, his deep voice booming through the massive speakers. "Please welcome our first speaker of the evening, Mr. Charles Spencer." The audience claps politely. Spencer stands up slowly from table 14. He buttons his dark suit jacket. He walks purposefully down the long center aisle. The cameras follow his every single step. Zuri reaches the lectern entirely unnoticed. She places the crystal glass of ice water down. She slips the tightly folded piece of paper directly on top of the black leather folder. She steps quickly back into the shadows of the heavy red curtain. Spencer climbs the short wooden stairs. He walks directly to the center of the stage. He places both of his hands firmly on the hard edges of the podium. He looks down. He sees the small folded square of paper resting on his speech. He picks it up and unfolds it quickly. He reads the thick black words. "The speech in your folder is not yours." Spencer opens the heavy leather folder. He stares directly at the printed words he absolutely never wrote. He looks up at the massive crowd, his eyes locking instantly onto DeAndre, who stands smiling confidently in the back of the room. Spencer stands completely frozen under the hot, bright stage lights. He grips the edges of the wooden lectern, his knuckles turning totally white. He looks down at the printed pages inside the leather folder. The fake words demand he endorse a man he deeply despises. He reaches out and closes the black folder completely. He shoves it aggressively to the far left side of the podium. He looks out across the enormous, quiet ballroom. His eyes scan the front row and lock directly onto the empty space at table 14. The chair is back. Zuri steps out quickly from behind the heavy velvet curtain. She approaches the podium slowly, carrying a silver tray. She carefully adjusts the cold glass of ice water near Spencer's right hand. She leans in incredibly close, her face completely hidden from the television cameras by the large microphone stand. The white rose was meant for it, Zuri whispers rapidly into his ear. Queen Camilla asked for it. Zuri steps back quickly and disappears into the dark shadows. Spencer's entire body tenses. He turns his head slowly and looks directly at the principal table. Queen Camilla sits perfectly straight in her heavy chair. She does not smile. Her shoulders are entirely rigid. She looks completely defensive and completely closed off. Spencer stares at her cold expression. He fully misinterprets her posture. He completely assumes she fought against the chair and lost. He assumes she sits there in silent, furious protest of his sister's memory. Spencer takes a deep, slow breath. The microphone picks up the heavy sound. The entire room waits in absolute silence. He does not read the fake speech. He abandons the ceremonial tribute entirely. He leans forward, his broad shoulders filling the camera frame. "We often talk about grief in completely public terms," Spencer says loudly, his voice echoing fiercely off the high ceilings. "We treat loss like a massive public monument. We build statues. We leave empty chairs at beautiful tables." The audience remains totally silent. The cameras flash rapidly, catching his intense, unblinking eyes. But the absolute hardest part of losing someone does not happen in public, Spencer continues, his voice dropping slightly. It happens entirely in the quiet, lonely moments. It happens late at night, when the telephone rings and you are simply too tired to answer it. You tell yourself you will absolutely call them back tomorrow. You tell yourself time will always wait for you. Down in the audience, several wealthy guests lower their printed programs. They stop looking at their expensive phones. They look completely directly at the man on the stage. "I have spent years strictly defending my sister in public," Spencer says firmly, gripping the podium tight. "The much harder truth is that there were specific moments when I completely failed to hear her in private. I let her sit in profound loneliness because I was entirely distracted by my own life." Dr. Imani sits at her cramped table in the back corner. Tears begin to fall completely silently down her face. Spencer looks directly at Queen Camilla. She is no longer rigid. Her defensive posture completely drops. She stares up at him, her eyes wide with total confusion. She suddenly leans toward her private secretary, Tariq, and whispers frantically, asking him why the tribute was completely removed from her official briefing. Spencer turns his head and looks sharply toward the heavy brass doors in the back of the room. He looks directly at the event director. "The person who secretly scrubbed my sister's name from this specific program completely misunderstands the entire purpose of remembrance," Spencer says loudly, his voice cutting through the room like a sharp knife. DeAndre panics completely. He hits his hidden earpiece hard. He demands the sound technician cut the stage microphone immediately. The heavy audio speakers suspended high above the main stage pop violently. A loud, sharp electronic screech tears through the massive ballroom, forcing hundreds of wealthy guests to cover their ears. The harsh noise cuts off abruptly. The microphone goes completely dead. Total, suffocating silence drops over the large room like a thick blanket. Charles Spencer taps the silver metal grate of the microphone twice. Nothing happens. The green power light on the base of the stand goes completely black. In the back corner, DeAndre drops his hand from his hidden earpiece. A cold, hard smile stretches across his face. DeAndre watches the stage monitor closely. He successfully forced the sound technician to pull the main audio feed. He expects Spencer to look totally embarrassed, fold his thick papers, and walk quickly off the stage. Spencer does not move backward. He steps entirely away from the wooden lectern. He walks strictly to the edge of the stage, leaving the dead microphone behind. He looks directly out at the vast sea of confused faces. He takes a deep, heavy breath and projects his powerful voice completely across the massive room without any electronic help. He refuses to be silenced today completely. "We demand that our heroes remain entirely flawless," Spencer shouts, his voice carrying clearly to the back walls. "We lock them inside perfect glass boxes, but idealizing someone silences them completely. It strips away their actual humanity. It turns them into a flat photograph. My sister was not a perfect saint. She was a complicated, beautiful, deeply flawed human being." Down at the cramped table near the loud kitchen doors, Dr. Imani completely breaks down. She covers her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking violently as silent tears pour down her cheeks. She remembers the absolute real woman entirely. Dozens of high-profile guests at the front tables slowly lower their printed programs. They completely stop looking at their expensive phones. They sit frozen, absolutely captivated by the raw honesty radiating strictly from the stage. Queen Camilla's defensive expression completely melts away. The tight, guarded look on her face transforms instantly into total confusion. She leans quickly to her right, grabbing her private secretary violently by his dark suit sleeve. "Tariq," Camilla whispers fiercely, ignoring everyone watching her. "Why did my official briefing say absolutely nothing about a memorial tribute tonight? Why was I told he wanted to embarrass me?" Tariq looks down at his heavy clipboard. His face turns completely pale. "I do not know, Your Majesty. The production office sent the final documents directly to our security team. The chair was listed strictly as a security threat." DeAndre watches the interaction from the dark balcony. His cold smile completely vanishes. The plan is falling completely apart. The audience is not angry at Spencer. They are absolutely mesmerized by him. DeAndre grabs his radio quickly, screaming violently at the sound technician to play the loud exit music to completely drown Spencer out. The technician entirely ignores the angry director. "Hi viewers, have you ever spoken a difficult truth in a room full of people who wanted you to stay quiet? Tell me your story in the comments below." Up on the stage, Spencer points directly at the empty velvet chair sitting at the edge of table 14. "We use grief as a heavy weapon," he yells, his voice cracking slightly with intense emotion. "We absolutely demand that people pick sides. We want loud, angry fights because they are completely entertaining." Suddenly, the green light on the large podium flashes entirely back on. The main audio slider shoots straight up. The microphone feeds back with a loud, sharp whine. Spencer turns around quickly. He walks rapidly back to the wooden lectern. He grabs the microphone firmly with both hands. The massive audience immediately starts calling out, telling him to completely keep speaking. Loud voices echo across the massive ballroom, completely drowning out the quiet background music DeAndre tried to forcefully through the overhead speakers. Spencer looks directly into the nearest television camera. His blue eyes are completely hard and incredibly cold. He completely abandons his nostalgic tone entirely. He shifts directly into an incredibly aggressive, firm, and unyielding stance. He leans heavily into the microphone, his voice booming loudly through the restored audio system. Someone in this exact building decided that honoring a promise was a massive public relations problem, Spencer says clearly. Someone decided that completely erasing my sister's name would create a highly profitable scandal. The entire ballroom holds its collective breath in total shock. "I want to know right now," Spencer demands, his loud voice echoing violently off the crystal chandeliers overhead. "Who ordered that chair removed?" The heavy ballroom doors swing entirely open. DeAndre stands completely frozen. The cameras pivot directly toward the empty seat. The heavy television cameras pivot rapidly away from the wooden stage. Dozens of glowing red recording lights focus entirely on the completely empty velvet chair sitting at table 14. DeAndre watches from the dark balcony, his heart slamming violently against his ribs. He completely expects Charles Spencer to point directly at Queen Camilla. He wants Spencer to scream angry accusations across the massive room. He desperately needs the royal family publicly humiliated to launch his own private foundation. Spencer entirely refuses to take the bait. He looks directly at Queen Camilla, but he does not raise his hand in anger. He addresses the entire institution completely instead. "We have a terrible habit of turning women into completely opposing symbols," Spencer says firmly, his voice ringing loudly through the crystal-clear speakers. "We demand that one woman plays the perfect saint so the other woman can play the absolutely permanent villain." Queen Camilla completely freezes in her seat. Her wide eyes lock entirely onto Spencer's face. "I absolutely refuse to participate in this cruel game tonight," Spencer continues loudly, gripping the heavy podium tight. "My sister was not a completely flawless angel, and the woman sitting at this table right now is not a completely evil monster." Both of these extreme simplifications prevent us from reflecting honestly on our shared humanity. They stop us entirely from healing. This entirely unexpected moral position completely unsettles everyone in the massive ballroom. The wealthy guests expect a violent public fight. Instead, they get complete human grace. Queen Camilla slowly drops her hands into her lap. The deep realization washes completely over her. Spencer did not come to this charity gala to humiliate her on live television. He came completely to stop the cycle of abuse entirely. He refuses to be weaponized against her completely. Up on the dark balcony, DeAndre completely panics. The mutual hostility between the two famous families is collapsing entirely right in front of his eyes. His massive plan relies completely on intense public conflict. If they forgive each other, there is absolutely no scandal to sell to the eager press. DeAndre grabs his radio tightly. "Move in right now," he screams violently into the small microphone. "Get that completely empty chair off the main floor immediately. Do not wait for him to finish speaking. Yank it out completely right now." Down on the crowded floor, 4 large security agents march swiftly toward table 14. Their heavy black boots stomp loudly against the thick carpet. Hi viewers, have you ever chosen completely unexpected forgiveness over a bitter fight? Tell me your story in the comments below. Queen Camilla watches the large men moving aggressively toward the beautiful tribute. She turns sharply to her private secretary, Tariq. "Stop them right now," she orders fiercely. "Tell them to completely leave that chair alone entirely." Tariq jumps entirely out of his seat. He tries absolutely to push his way through the thick crowd of wealthy guests, but the heavy press of standing bodies completely blocks his path. The aggressive security agents reach the edge of the humanitarian table entirely. They reach out their thick hands to grab the heavy velvet fabric of the empty chair. The massive ballroom audience entirely holds its collective breath in absolute shock and complete disbelief over the sudden movement. Zuri steps completely out of the dark shadows. Her crisp black and white uniform starkly contrasts with the bright, glittering evening gown surrounding her entirely. She plants her black rubber shoes firmly onto the thick carpet. She slides her small body directly straight between the extremely large, aggressive security guards and the entirely empty chair. She refuses to move. The lead security agent stops dead in his tracks. He stares completely down at the young banquet server in absolute shock. "Move out of the way right now," the tall agent orders violently, his deep voice carrying completely over the quiet crowd. "You are entirely interfering with official event security. Entirely." Zuri shakes her head entirely firmly. She reaches completely directly into the deep pocket of her black apron. She pulls out the original, completely faded paper name card entirely. The one absolute piece of evidence DeAndre completely, desperately, strictly wanted, erased completely from the official historical record entirely. She turns completely around and strictly places the small paper card flat onto the crisp white tablecloth, directly in front of the empty velvet chair. The massive cameras completely flash violently. Spencer entirely stops speaking completely up on the large main wooden stage. He watches the young server entirely shut down the massive security team completely by herself. The lead agent strictly steps heavily forward and aggressively reaches entirely out to forcefully physically grab Zuri violently. She totally braces her entire body completely, absolutely refusing to abandon the beautiful empty memorial chair. The extremely large security agent violently yanks Zuri backward by the heavy fabric of her black apron. The sudden, harsh movement lifts the young banquet server entirely off her rubber-soled shoes. She crashes hard against the edge of the wooden humanitarian table. Silver forks and crystal water glasses rattle loudly across the pristine white tablecloth. The crowd of wealthy guests entirely gasps in absolute shock. The bright television cameras instantly pivot away from the empty velvet chair and completely focus their high-resolution lenses directly onto Zuri. The loud flashing of the press cameras perfectly illuminates her terrified but completely defiant face. DeAndre leans violently over the polished brass railing of the dark balcony above. "Arrest her immediately!" he screams at the absolute top of his lungs. His incredibly polished, professional mask completely shatters into tiny pieces. He completely loses total control of his intense emotions in front of the entire royal press pool. She is entirely trespassing on a secure floor. Drag her completely out of this building right now. The lead security agent tightens his massive fist around Zuri's uniform. He pulls her forcefully toward the heavy brass service doors. Zuri digs the black rubber heels of her shoes deeply into the thick carpet. She refuses completely to walk away. She points her shaking finger directly back at the small, faded paper name card resting exactly on the empty porcelain dinner plate. Malik aggressively steps completely out from the thick wall of shocked guests. The senior royal liaison completely blocks the security team's path. He reaches out his hand and forcefully shoves the massive guard backward. He completely separates the violent man from the young server. Malik stands extremely tall, his sharp dark suit cutting perfectly through the bright lights. He looks directly up at the angry event director screaming from the balcony. "Let her go immediately," Malik orders strictly. His deep, commanding voice completely slices through the noisy chaos of the massive ballroom. He reaches directly inside his tailored jacket. He pulls out the freshly folded piece of paper. He holds it high directly in the air, for the bright cameras to completely capture. This young woman is entirely right. That specific paper name card was completely authorized on the original master seating plan. The loud crowd entirely erupts into frantic, heavy whispering. Hundreds of high-profile guests turn their heads rapidly back and forth between Malik on the busy floor and Charles Spencer standing completely frozen on the large wooden stage. Nia forcefully pushes the heavy swinging kitchen doors completely open. She completely ignores the angry shouts of the head chef trying to stop her. She marches swiftly straight onto the main ballroom floor. She clutches a thick stack of printed revision logs completely against her chest. She walks directly toward the center royal table. She slams the thick papers completely flat onto the glass surface right in front of Queen Camilla. "The entire historical memorial was strictly altered tonight," Nia says loudly, looking directly at the royal guests. She points her index finger completely at the bright red ink on the printed page. The digital seating chart was completely hacked 4 distinct times in the last 90 minutes. Someone purposely erased the late Princess of Wales's name from the official record to entirely manufacture a massive public conflict. Up on the brightly lit wooden stage, Charles Spencer completely understands exactly what is happening. He steps quickly completely away from the wooden lectern. He holds his identical faded place card entirely up in his right hand. He completely matches his card directly to the exact one Zuri bravely placed on the empty dinner table. The entire crowd completely realizes the absolute truth. The beautiful memorial was completely real, completely authorized, and completely stolen away by the event director. Queen Camilla sits perfectly straight in her heavy wooden chair. Her eyes completely widen as she stares down at the thick printed computer logs resting on her table. She completely sees the authorization code printed entirely in bold black letters next to the deletion command. She turns her head completely sharply to her left. She looks directly at Tariq. "Look at this document right now," Camilla demands strictly. Her voice shakes slightly with total disbelief. "They attached my specific private office code directly to the order to remove that completely empty chair. They used my name to completely erase the tribute." Tariq leans violently over the heavy table. He pulls his thick black square glasses out of his pocket. He closely inspects the printed numbers on the page. His face turns completely chalk white. He looks up at Camilla, completely ignoring the flashing press cameras entirely surrounding them. "Your Majesty," Tariq says, his voice completely dropping to a terrified whisper. "This specific authorization is entirely impossible." Tariq forcefully taps his thick index finger directly onto the printed computer log. The loud smack of his hand hitting the heavy table echoes sharply. This specific digital access code completely belonged to a senior staff member who entirely retired from royal service over 8 months ago. Tariq explains rapidly. "Our security department completely deactivated this specific number last year. It is a completely dead code. Nobody in our private office could possibly use this sequence to authorize absolutely anything tonight." Malik steps completely away from the empty humanitarian chair. He walks quickly across the thick carpet directly toward the royal table. He takes the thick printed papers completely out of Nia's hands. He completely reviews the server path printed at the very bottom of the page. He points completely to the final string of digital routing numbers. "The fake command did not entirely come from the palace servers," Malik announces loudly. His deep voice completely carries across the quiet room. "This specific IP address completely traces entirely back to a temporary administrative account, an account completely controlled exclusively by the event director's production office." DeAndre completely rushes down the grand staircase from the dark balcony. He pushes violently through the crowded room. He completely stops directly in front of the royal table. His face is extremely red, completely covered in a thin layer of nervous sweat. He throws his hands up in a totally defensive posture. "It was an administrative precaution completely," DeAndre insists loudly, desperately trying entirely to spin the total disaster. "I completely utilized an old placeholder code simply to secure the floor plan. I completely believed the empty memorial chair posed a total security risk to Your Majesty. I entirely removed it completely for your absolute safety." Queen Camilla completely stands up from her heavy chair. She entirely ignores his loud, frantic excuses. She looks directly straight into DeAndre's sweating face. She is completely cold and extremely focused. "If you completely cared strictly about my absolute safety and my direct instructions," Camilla asks fiercely, "then why did you completely ignore my direct request to place a single white rose directly on that empty chair?" DeAndre completely freezes. He opens his mouth to speak, but absolutely no words come out. He entirely realizes he is completely trapped in his own web of massive lies. Zuri steps entirely forward from the edge of the humanitarian table. She completely reaches deeply into her dark uniform pocket. She pulls out the single, slightly crushed white rose. She also completely pulls out the small, square handwritten note, entirely covered in clear tape. She holds both items completely up for the bright television cameras to capture. She walks entirely past DeAndre and gently places the white flower and the note directly onto the royal table in front of the Queen. Charles Spencer watches the completely stunning revelation entirely from the wooden stage. He looks directly at the handwritten note. He completely realizes in one massive rush of clarity that he totally misread Queen Camilla's absolute silence earlier in the evening. She never completely hated the tribute. She actually entirely tried to add to it. She entirely tried to offer a completely peaceful gesture. Camilla completely realizes that her own cautious, careful language completely enabled DeAndre's massive deception entirely. From the absolute farthest dark corner of the enormous ballroom, Dr. Imani completely pushes her way forcefully through the heavy crowd of guests. She finally entirely escapes the cramped kitchen table. She stops directly next to Malik. DeAndre completely encouraged the memorial tribute 3 entire weeks ago. Imani yells loudly, pointing her finger completely at the director's chest. He completely told me the empty chair was a beautiful idea. He completely fully supported it, right up until the exact minute Queen Camilla officially confirmed her attendance. Then he entirely turned it into a completely massive weapon. A tall press photographer entirely breaks rank from the strictly secured media pool. He completely steps entirely onto the main carpet. He holds his bright cell phone completely up in the air. She is completely telling the absolute truth, the photographer says loudly. DeAndre completely sent my editor a text message yesterday. He entirely promised my agency exclusive, highly restricted access to photograph Queen Camilla, entirely standing completely next to the empty chair, before he completely ordered his staff to completely hide it. The tall press photographer forcefully shoves his extremely bright cell phone screen completely directly into DeAndre's sweating face. The glowing digital text message is completely visible to everyone standing completely near the royal table. The message entirely proves the exact timeline of the massive trap. DeAndre completely planned to entirely leak a highly sentimental photograph to the global press first. He completely wanted to capture the emotional image entirely, to boost the charity's completely public profile. His massive plan completely required him to completely steal the chair away exactly 5 minutes before Charles Spencer walked completely onto the stage to give his heavily promoted speech. DeAndre completely entirely relied on Spencer reacting entirely with massive, completely uncontained public anger. Any furious, violent reaction from the grieving brother would entirely create a massive second wave of completely viral global publicity. DeAndre completely treated both famous royal women strictly as highly profitable marketing assets. He completely reduced a highly sensitive family tragedy into a massive digital content farm, completely designed to launch his entirely new private business completely into the stratosphere. Up on the massive wooden stage, Charles Spencer completely drops his head. He stares completely blankly down at the heavy mahogany lectern. He completely realizes that he entirely nearly gave the corrupt event director exactly the massive violent spectacle he completely desperately wanted. He entirely almost completely destroyed the entire evening by completely jumping directly into an aggressive, totally public attack. Queen Camilla entirely steps entirely around the heavy circular table. She completely closes the physical distance entirely between herself and the panicked director. She stops exactly 1 foot entirely away from DeAndre. She does not completely yell. She does not completely raise her voice at all. Her absolute quiet tone completely cuts entirely deeper than completely any loud shout ever could entirely. You completely used a dead woman's absolute memory, Camilla says extremely coldly, staring completely directly into his entirely panicked eyes. You completely manipulated an entirely grieving brother, and you completely attempted entirely to use my own name completely strictly, to completely hurt my own family completely, on live television. You are completely finished here. DeAndre completely steps backward entirely. He completely hits his back entirely against the heavy edge of a completely nearby table. He entirely looks completely frantically around the entirely massive room, completely searching entirely for any total support completely. He finds absolutely none entirely. The massive controversy would have completely raised millions of dollars. DeAndre shouts completely, his voice completely entirely cracking with total desperation. He completely wildly gestures entirely toward the completely empty humanitarian table. Do you completely know exactly how entirely hard it completely is, entirely get people completely to entirely care about vulnerable families completely? You entirely need a massive scandal completely to make wealthy people completely open their wallets completely. I entirely did it completely for the charity. Completely. Can total dishonesty ever completely be entirely justified completely, when the money completely might completely support a truly worthwhile cause entirely? Nia entirely walks completely directly over to the wooden stage. She completely hands Charles Spencer the thick black binder, completely entirely filled, entirely with DeAndre's entirely private financial foundation, completely launched documents. Completely Spencer completely takes the heavy book entirely in his completely right hand. He entirely holds the absolute total power completely to completely destroy DeAndre completely financially entirely and entirely publicly completely right now. Entirely on live global television. Entirely he completely entirely could completely entirely ruin the man's completely entire life. Entirely with one completely single sentence. Entirely over the completely restored microphone. Completely, Spencer completely looks entirely down at the heavy black folder completely. He entirely slowly completely lifts his completely and entirely head completely and entirely looks completely out, across the completely utterly silent room entirely. He completely entirely steps, completely entirely strictly back, entirely up to the completely entirely live microphone. Completely revenge. Completely entirely feels absolutely incredibly satisfying. Entirely in the absolute completely exactly short term. Spencer says completely loudly entirely. But completely exposing his completely private records. Completely entirely right now. Completely would simply entirely turn this completely beautiful room entirely into another completely entirely massive marketplace. Entirely completely for human pain. Entirely. We completely absolutely strictly refuse completely entirely to completely participate completely in that completely entirely, exactly completely toxic entirely, transaction, completely entirely. Spencer completely drops the heavy black financial binder completely entirely directly onto the completely entirely hard wooden stage, completely floor entirely. He completely entirely absolutely refuses completely entirely to give the massive entirely completely greedy completely entirely media exactly completely entirely exactly what they entirely completely want. Charles Spencer abandons the heavy black binder on the hard wooden floor of the stage. He steps firmly back to the microphone, his broad shoulders dropping slightly as the intense, rigid tension finally leaves his body. The bright spotlights shine directly on his face, highlighting the deep exhaustion in his blue eyes. He does not point an accusing finger at the event director. He refuses to give the hungry press pool the violent, explosive reaction they desperately want to capture. I arrived in this room tonight, fully prepared for a war, Spencer says, his deep voice carrying clearly over the dead silent ballroom. I walked through those doors, expecting every single glance to be an attack against my family. When you carry heavy grief for decades, suspicion starts to feel exactly like loyalty. You convince yourself that fighting everyone is the only way to protect the people you lost. He looks down at his own hands, resting flat against the polished mahogany lectern. He shakes his head slowly. I misread the silence, Spencer admits openly. He looks directly at Queen Camilla, offering a rare, completely unscripted moment of vulnerability. I assumed the worst, because the worst is what we are constantly sold. I refuse to demand public humiliation tonight. It will not heal my sister, and it will not help the vulnerable families this charity actually exists to serve. Spencer issues a direct, unyielding demand for a strict independent review of the St. Celandine Humanitarian Gala and the event director's financial foundation. He shifts the entire focus of the evening away from the wealthy, famous guests sitting at the front tables. He directs the attention strictly back to the humanitarian workers sitting in the shadows. He steps down from the large wooden stage. He walks slowly down the center aisle, holding the faded, perfectly preserved original event invitation in his hand. The heavy cameras track his every single step. He reaches the edge of table 14. He gently places the historical paper directly onto the empty dinner plate. Zuri stands right beside him. She reaches into her black uniform apron and retrieves the slightly bruised white rose. She rests the delicate flower carefully on top of the original invitation. Dr. Amani steps forward from the back of the crowd. She wipes the wet tears from her cheeks. She speaks clearly, her voice cutting through the quiet room. She promised me she would sit in this exact chair to honor the nurses and doctors working in the hardest places on earth. That was her absolute promise. Spencer turns slowly toward the principal table. He looks directly across the thick carpet at Queen Camilla. "Your Majesty?" Spencer asks, his voice low but completely firm. "May the chair remain exactly as it is?" Queen Camilla pushes her heavy wooden seat back. She rises slowly to her feet. The entire room watches her, holding their collective breath. She stands completely still, looking at the empty seat, but she does not immediately answer his question. Queen Camilla steps away from her heavily guarded table. She walks in absolute silence across the thick, expensive carpet. The bright flashes from the press pool illuminate the sharp, serious lines of her face. She moves with deliberate, unhurried purpose directly toward table 14. DeAndre panics. The event director steps forcefully out of the shadows, desperate to intercept her and regain control of the broadcast. "Your Majesty, please," he starts, reaching his hand out. Malik steps instantly into his path. The senior royal liaison slams his heavy shoulder hard into DeAndre's chest, completely blocking the director from taking another step. Malik does not say a single word. He simply glares down at DeAndre, forcing him backward into the dark corner. Camilla reaches the edge of the humanitarian table. She stands directly next to Charles Spencer. She looks down at the white rose, the original invitation, and the small, faded name card resting on the porcelain plate. She reaches out with a steady hand. She gently adjusts the displaced name card, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the crystal water glass. "We spend far too much time protecting people from discomfort," Camilla says softly, her voice carrying only to the people standing immediately around her. "We hide the truth because the truth is messy. Erasing history does not protect anyone. It simply creates a completely different kind of harm." She turns her head and looks directly into Spencer's eyes. She does not offer artificial forgiveness. She does not reach out to hug him or manufacture a fake, heartwarming moment for the aggressive television cameras. The heavy, difficult history between them remains entirely real. Spencer understands the boundary. He offers a slow, highly respectful inclination of his head. He accepts her honest gesture exactly for what it is. The audience suddenly rises. Hundreds of wealthy guests stand up from their expensive dinners. The massive ballroom fills with deafening applause. The clapping does not celebrate a specific winner, and it does not signal a perfect reconciliation. The loud applause recognizes two fiercely guarded people entirely refusing to let a third person profit from their shared pain. DeAndre watches the standing ovation from his trapped position against the back wall. He wipes the cold sweat from his forehead. He breathes a heavy sigh of relief. He wrongly assumes the crisis has ended because Spencer refused to make a formal criminal accusation on the microphone. He thinks his career is safe. Malik reaches out quickly and grabs the thick plastic lanyard hanging around DeAndre's neck. With one sharp, violent yank, Malik snaps the cord and strictly confiscates the director's absolute all-access security badge. Two large, heavily armed security officers grab DeAndre by his expensive suit jacket. They march him quickly and silently out the back service doors, dragging him strictly away from the operational area. He does not get to pack his desk. He does not get to make a phone call. Malik immediately orders the event production servers locked down, preserving every single email, financial transaction, and altered seating chart for the upcoming legal review. The highly anticipated launch of DeAndre's massive private foundation is instantly suspended. Down in the chaotic kitchen, the harsh institutional consequences roll downhill rapidly. A floor manager yells strictly at Zuri, ordering the young server to hand over her apron and leave the property immediately for breaking protocol. Nia overhears the aggressive firing. She walks straight up to the floor manager, rips her own laminated credentials completely off her shirt, and drops them flat on a metal prep table. She announces her immediate resignation in loud, fiery protest. Before security can escort the two women out of the building, Charles Spencer walks directly through the swinging kitchen doors. He stops the guards. He demands firmly that absolutely no ordinary employee faces punishment for preserving the truthful historical record of the charity. Meanwhile, Tariq stands in the quiet hallway, holding a glowing tablet. He releases a strict, authorized statement from Queen Camilla's private office. The digital press release confirms absolutely that the removal order did not originate from the royal staff. It clearly exposes the forged access code. However, the rapid speed of the internet completely outpaces the truth. Journalists locked outside the ballroom begin reporting entirely conflicting versions of the explosive eruption. Someone leaks the out-of-context photograph of Queen Camilla, looking utterly shocked with her hand over her mouth. The image spreads like absolute wildfire across social media. Bright, flashing online headlines falsely claim that Charles Spencer violently attacked the Queen on stage. The click-driven articles aggressively state that Spencer accused Camilla of personally erasing his sister's memory. The digital world rewards the fake conflict, generating millions of angry comments within minutes. Tariq shows the trending lies to Camilla. She stares at the glowing screen. She faces a massive, difficult choice. She must decide whether to forcefully correct the global story, which will entirely expose the palace's massive internal security failure regarding the stolen protocol codes, or let the aggressive lie stand to protect the institution. Queen Camilla completely rejects the easy path of silence. She authorizes Tariq to release a highly detailed, factual timeline of the entire evening. The official palace statement strictly confirms the empty chair's original historical purpose. The document is cold, precise, and entirely professional. It does not offer flowing praise for Charles Spencer, nor does it issue aggressive condemnations. It simply tells the absolute truth. Spencer releases absolutely no triumphant response. He stays completely quiet, refusing to feed the hungry media cycle. The independent legal review hits the charity fast and hard. The investigators completely clear the ordinary event staff of any wrongdoing. They pull Nietzsche's printed server logs and confirm the exact timeline of DeAndre's procedural manipulation. Zuri is officially reinstated. The St. Celandine Board of Directors offers her a permanent, well-paying role within the charity's administrative office. Zuri accepts the job, but the young woman remains deeply cautious, questioning if she truly wants a career so close to such easily corrupted power. Nia hands the legal team her entire archive of strictly documented program revisions, ensuring DeAndre can never work in the nonprofit sector again. During his formal deposition, DeAndre aggressively defends his actions. He admits he actively manufactured the controversy. He claims he believed an emotional, public fight was absolutely necessary to keep the charity visible in a crowded, noisy world. Sitting in his quiet study at Althorpe, Spencer reads the transcript of DeAndre's excuse. He recognizes a highly uncomfortable, ugly truth. Modern audiences often reward violent conflict much faster than they reward quiet compassion. But Spencer also knows that a supposedly good cause never purifies dishonest methods. Once human pain becomes a promotional tool, the real people involved cease to be human beings and simply become digital content. Back at the charity headquarters, Dr. Imani packs up DeAndre's empty office. She pulls a dusty, heavy cardboard box from the top shelf of the closet. She sorts through old, yellowed files dating back decades. She pulls out a small, sealed envelope wedged between two heavy ledgers. She slices the old paper open. She unfolds a handwritten note, dated from the very first year the gala was ever planned. Her eyes scan the faded ink rapidly. She stops breathing. She realizes instantly that the empty chair was originally supposed to represent something entirely different. The faded ink on the old paper reveals the massive historical blind spot of the entire institution. The empty chair at table 14 was absolutely never intended to memorialize only one single famous woman. The note explicitly states the seat was meant to honor every single patient, every tired volunteer, and every grieving family unable to afford a ticket to the wealthy gala. When Charles Spencer receives a copy of the old note, he sits in absolute silence. He realizes that by focusing so fiercely and exclusively on defending his royal sister, he accidentally repeated the exact same flaw he hated. He centered massive wealth and high status over quiet, ordinary service. Exactly 1 year later, the bright lights shine down on the St. Celandine Humanitarian Gala. The rain pours outside, but the ballroom is warm and full. At the very end of table 14, the velvet chair remains entirely empty. There is absolutely no famous name attached to the porcelain dinner plate. Instead, a simple, beautiful silver plaque rests next to the crystal water glass. The engraving reads, "For those whose service was never photographed." Zuri attends the dinner, not in a server's uniform, but wearing a beautiful dark evening gown as an officially invited humanitarian representative. Charles Spencer and Queen Camilla both attend the event. They do not stage a highly publicized, fake reconciliation for the press. They sit at entirely separate tables. They do not force a friendship that does not truly exist. The deep wounds from the past are not magically resolved in one single evening. However, at the end of the night, they both walk quietly up to table 14. They separately place fresh flowers beside the empty chair. What truly changed is their strict, unbreakable refusal to ever let their personal wounds be manipulated by outsiders again. Royal titles and massive wealth can certainly shape the history books, but true courage often belongs strictly to the ordinary person with no title who simply refuses to remove a chair. Deep inside the charity headquarters, Nia closes her laptop. She stares at the massive digital archive she inherited. She found dark, hidden files, proving that the gala was not the first major historical event completely altered for extreme convenience. She realizes they have erased other names. How many incredible acts of true sacrifice have completely disappeared simply because the people responsible lacked a powerful, famous family name? Hi viewers, do you think Spencer was absolutely right to expose the lies on live television, or should he have handled the painful matter completely privately, behind closed doors? Let me know your honest opinion in the comments below. And if you want to uncover the next massive scandal hidden behind locked palace doors, make sure you subscribe right now and turn on your notification bell. Do not miss a support story that inspires and gives you an opportunity to share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others.